Okay. Welcome, folks. Ketavach Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Welcome, one and all. As we continue our weekly journey, welcome to Leslie, to Sia, to Yehuda, Rachel, Joseph, Art, and Diane, Coy, Andrew, Tim, Chanel, Michael, and Sharon. Beautiful. So, his teachings in honor of my Mechutin, his neshama go from strength to strength. Rabbi Shemario Katzen, of blessed memory, my daughter-in-law's father, was just at their home, celebrating together with them. So we continue in a journey together, a weekly journey, the Torah portion, and how the Torah portion comes alive. Well, this one's coming alive, like every week. Just a reminder to everybody, mute yourself. If you want to ask a question, by all means, ask questions. Otherwise, if you don't mind, so that we don't get some background noise. So, where are we in the narrative? We're in the desert. In the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, book Bamidbar, meaning in the desert, in the journeys. Wow, divine providence. Tonight is my wife and I's our anniversary. 42 years. And thank you.
It would have been my parents, 68.
Mazel tov, Rabbi.
And at least 120 happy and healthy years.
Wow. So I'm just thinking, speaking about in the desert, the Jews, how many journeys they had in the desert? 42. 42 journeys in the desert until they came to the Holy Land. So I don't know what that means exactly. But if that means we're coming to Mashiach and we're going to leave exile, so be it. So this Parsha, actually just to add a little more to this. So this is our anniversary. Tomorrow we're going to be starting learning at 7:05 in the morning. Please come and join us. A mimer called Rani V'Simchi, which my Hebrew name is Rani. My wife is Simcha, so it's Rani V'Simchi. The Haftorah this week is Rani V'Simchi, which is the Haftorah of our Shabbos Sheva Brachos. When we got married, this was the Haftorah of that Shabbos of our wedding, with our names there. But that's not all. It's also the Haftorah of Shabbos Chanukah. And the year that when we went out for the first time on a date was right after Hanukkah. And that Shabbos, before we went out, I don't know, maybe it was 2 weeks before, I'm not certain exactly. I have to look that up actually in the calendar. The Rebbe made a Fabringen, Shabbos Fabringen of Hanukkah, and he spoke about Rani V'Simchi. He spoke about the Haftorah. So that was a sign from heaven. A sign from heaven, many other signs from heaven, no doubt, for me. And my blessing of being married for 42 years to my dear wife. So in her honor. So the first anniversary of the Exodus was quickly approaching in this week's Parsha. And much has gone by in the first year of the marriage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Knesset Israel, Jewish people and God. We went out of Egypt, of course, the sea split, the manna fell from heaven, we got the 10 Commandments, we worshiped the golden calf, the tablets were shattered, we did tshuva, and we're forgiven, and then we were told to build a home for God, a Mishkan. And then, of course, came the inauguration, last week's Parsha, of the Mishkan and the Mizbeach, the altar. And as they're preparing to celebrate the first anniversary, right, of the Exodus, what does God do? He instructs the Jewish people that they need to bring a Paschal lamb offering. But what was the problem? That there were people who were ritually impure because they had come in contact with a corpse. That makes you ritually impure. And they were not able, therefore, to bring an offering. So this is this week's Parsha. Let me get over here. On. Ooh. Give me a moment. I see that I had a problem over here. Oops. Sorry, something didn't come through. Now I gotta make it happen. All right. I'll take a moment. So, it says that the nation brought the Paschal lamb offering on the 14th of the month, as Hashem commanded. There are men that were ritually impure. Again, as we said, contact with a dead body. They were unable to bring the Paschal offering. So they came and they said, we are impure because of contact with the corpse. Should we lose out? Lama nigara. And unable to bring the divine offering in its time among the Jewish people. So Moshe replied, stand and wait a while until I get instructions from God. Good question, but he doesn't have an answer. Wait. And God spoke to Moshe saying, now let me get this over here. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. Speak to the children of Israel and tell them that any man who will be impure by contact with a corpse or is distant on a journey, whether among you today or in a future generation, should bring the Paschal lamb offering to God. They should bring it in the evening of the 14th day of the second month. In other words, a month later. They should eat it along with matzah and bitter herbs. So this is a first in Jewish teachings. Usually, if you missed something, you missed it, period. Now, in prayer, we're learning now in Rambam, we just learned in Rambam in prayer, actually in yesterday's class, that if you missed a prayer service, right, you can make up for it the following prayer service. After if you missed mincha, you could say Marv, and then you could make the evening service, and then you can make up for the afternoon service afterwards, which is unique. But if you missed the Shema, for example, if you missed tefillin, you missed it. There's no makeup. You'll be more careful next time. You'll be more attuned and not miss it, and so on. But there isn't a makeup for the mitzvah, right? As the sages say, Avra zmanai batul karbonai. If the time has passed, the offering is nullified. So with sacrifices on the altar, it's that way. And many of the mitzvahs, the opportunity has been missed, right? Here's an exception that God says, and that's why Moshe had to wait, I got to hear from God. Good question, but let's hear what he has to say. And he says, okay, you were not able to make it the first time by the appointment. So 1 month later, on the 14th of the second month, you can come. And what is that called? Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, right? What is the message of Pesach Sheni? It's never too late. One should never despair. As long as there's hope, there is life. And this is what the previous Rebbe spoke very strongly about. Share this. Okay. I'm going to share the screen. See it in front of you? Yep. Okay, from the previous Rebbe, the theme of Pesach Sheni is that it's never too late. It's always possible to put things right. Even if one was ritually impure or one was at a distance, and even in a case when the failure to bring the offering was deliberate, we can nonetheless correct it. Again, other offerings don't have a makeup date. This is something unique, a second chance. The message is that we're empowered, that even if we did something deliberate, so the old saying, you snooze, you lose, that's not always correct. You might have snoozed and missed the first opportunity, but nishtokin verfallen, there's never lost hope. Don't have despair. You can make good on it. Okay. Why is that? Because from God's perspective, there's always a second chance. But there's one caveat to this, and that must be that we need to be proactive. In other words, we must seek out the chance. If it's something that needs rectifying and we just leave it, it's not going to be rectified. There's no miracles happening here. Right? And as we see, as the Rebbe explains in text number 3, is it large enough that you can read it? Oops. Some people ask, God knew in advance that some people would be unable to bring the offering on the 14th of Nisan. If so, why didn't he present the solution for the impure by designating the 14th of year as the makeup date when he first designated the 14th of Nisan as Passover? Good question. I mean, God knows that there's going to be people who are not going to be able to do this mitzvah. They're going to be impure, and they won't be able to be purified in time for doing it on the 14th of Nisan, on the eve of Passover. So set up the holiday to begin with that way, that there's a second chance. So why was it necessary to wait for the Jews to come to ask Moshe? For Moshe to say that he doesn't know and to ask God, because this is a new thing. And only then for God to designate the second Passover, Pesach Sheni. So he explains, so as long as Jews weren't bothered by their inability to join their brethren for the Paschal offering, the possibility for a second chance did not exist. Then their inner Jewish spark blossomed, and they ran to Moshe with a huge cry. How can we possibly be separated from our fellow Jews when they bring the offering? This created a new answer in heaven. That didn't previously exist. This created a new opportunity. That's extremely powerful. Actually, sorry, it didn't end there. And just as the determination to bring this offering extracted them from the bondage in Egypt, so too in every generation, determination to the point of self-sacrifice can extract a Jew from all forms of subjugation and oppressive life events. Wow. So we can create it. We have to create our second chance. In other words, if we're apathetic, forget about it. But even if we're slow to move on it, right? We don't deal with the shortcomings, the misgivings, the mishaps, the things that we need to deal with, then we're not creating a new reality. But if it bothers us and we're determined to correct, then God creates a new lifeline that wasn't there before, that we can rectify things in an amazing way. So past mistakes are not fixed in place, but they can always be corrected. And it's up to us. We can only correct it. In other words, we need to take the initiative. We need to take the initiative. That itself, we can close the books and, Dayenu. It's a beautiful message right there. But let's go even deeper into this. How exactly does this work? And what omissions does this have a makeup for? How do we understand this exactly? It sounds beautiful. It sounds very empowering. But let's go deeper to understand this more precisely. After all, we're Chabad, right? We need to understand it. So we will appreciate this by understanding a debate in the Talmud on how to look at this holiday, Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. How do we look at it? So Talmud tells us, Rabbi says, Rabbi, who is the author of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it's its own festival. Rabbi Nosson says it is a redress of the first Passover, but it is not a restoration of the first Passover. Rabbi Hanania ben Akavia says it is a restoration of the first Passover. So what is this? What's the distinction over here? They seem to be just saying things in different ways. So explanation is as follows. Rebbe says Pesach Sheni is its own festival. What does this mean? That it's not dependent on the first festival. Rather, it constitutes an independent obligation like any other festival. Like any other festival. Chanel, you have a question on the content, on understanding something?
Mm-hmm. So if it's independent, if you do the first one, do you have to do the second one?
Very good question. We're going to get there.
Okay.
So, I mean, the simple answer is no, because if you did the first one, then there's nothing to do for the second one because you already brought the Paschal lamb offering. But then, we'll take it for we'll wait. But simply put, it's about bringing the Paschal lamb offering. So if you did it the first time, there's no need to do it the second time. But still, Rebbe calls it an independent obligation. What that means is a very good question, which we're going to get to. Very good question. Okay. Rabbi Nosson says it's a redress of the first Passover, but it does not restore the first Passover. Meaning, if the first Passover you did not bring an offering, right? So he's saying it's a redress, but it doesn't restore the first one. Therefore, if you did not redress the first Passover, you are liable, not because you failed to bring the offering on the second Passover, but because you failed to bring it on the first Passover. And the main obligation is the first Passover, right? And if you failed the first time, you're liable, but you could redress it by bringing it the second time and take away the liability. Is that clear? Rabbi Hananya ben Akavya says, if you deliberately refrain from bringing the offering on the first Passover, you're not liable. Rabbi Nosson says you are liable if you didn't bring it the first time. But you can redress it and take away the liability. Liability by means here of premature death by the hands of heaven, by the way. Okay? But that's not the point over here. So Rabbi Hananya, he says differently, that you're not liable. Why? Because the Torah restores your missing offering on the second Passover. Now, you would be liable if you didn't bring it the second time, right? These are the three opinions. So again, what does this mean? Rebbe is saying that Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, is an entirely independent festival. No different than the first one. The difference is most Jews will celebrate the first one, right? On the eve of Passover. Some Jews, a minority, a small, maybe even a small minority, will celebrate the 14th of Iyar, right? No, Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Hananya, they disagree. They view Pesach Sheni as it's only a makeup for the first one. They disagree with Rebbe. It's not an independent obligation. It's a makeup for the first one. Now they only disagree between the two of them, Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Hananya, of how does it work? Rabbi Nosson believes that if you miss the first one, you have an offense. You're liable. But you could redress it with the second one. Right? In other words, you have a demerit hanging over you for a month. A month later, you could take the demerit away from you by bringing it the second time. That's how he looks at it. Rabbi Hananya says, no, the first one, you missed it. It's not there, it's erased. Right? If you bring the second one, then you get merit. But if you don't bring the second one, then you get demerit, but only the second time. Okay? Is that clear? Now, the question, though, is, how can Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, right, Rabbi, say that Pesach Sheni is an independent holiday? It's being only celebrated by the people who missed the first one. So if it's an independent holiday, shouldn't everybody celebrate it? Oh, sorry. Right? And the way we learn the Torah in the Torah, it sounds like it's a makeup, right? It sounds like it's a makeup. The people came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Lama Nigora, why should we lose out? We want to be with our brethren and bring the offering like they brought, but we're impure. We can't do it. So he said, wait a moment, let me find out from God. And then God tells him, okay, it sounds like it's a makeup, right? So it sounds counter to the whole idea of what Pesach Sheni is all about, a second chance. No lost hope. But no, he says an independent festival. How do we understand that? And we really need to understand this because the halachic ruling is according to Rabbi. It's considered an independent festival. So of course we must say that it is not completely independent of the first holiday of Pesach and the Paschal Lamb offering then. There's no question that there is an aspect of making up. Yet, it still has its own independent sense of being a festival. The question is how? How do we understand that? How does that make sense? So this we need to understand. When we say that something is complete, what does that mean exactly? So there's two meanings to the word complete, as the Rebbe explains. The words to complete, which by the way is the term that's used over tashlumin. L'shalem means to pay. Shalem means whole, complete, right? Or peace be unto you. Shalom aleichem, peace be unto you, right? But it means wholeness. Peace is wholeness, right? So tashlumin, it also means repayment, because when you repay somebody, what are you doing? Making whole, right? But there's two ways to understand this. One is to make it whole, to fill in that which is lacking, right? In other words, that's a repayment. You owe somebody, you're paying, so there's a lack. You are now making whole by paying back. But then there is tashlumin from shalem, whole, right? Peace be unto you, shalom aleichem, wholeness, peace to you, to make it perfect. Then nothing is lacking. An enhancement can render it just perfect. It's whole, but you can make it better, right? Something is, so if something is good enough, it may work for you, right? Yet, everybody will admit, if good is good, isn't better better? So let's get two examples of this idea over here. We learned, by the way, a plug for everyday Chumash learning that we learn every day at around 8:30, 8:40 in the morning, learning the Parsha of the week. So 3 weeks ago, we did, 4 weeks ago, it's Parsha Bahar. We did laws that govern the sale of the ancestral homes in the land of Israel. Joshua, he divided the land by the 12 tribes. And therefore, really when you sold land, primarily you were leasing out land until the Jubilee year when it would return, right? Sometimes people needed to sell land because they needed money to survive. And the Torah permits that you could do it. But it's still considered a negative thing because this is your ancestral land. And there were people who lived on their property, their family, for generations, for centuries. That's really, called living in the village, right? That's really, like, you're living with your grandparents together with you. Not only grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents lived on the same land because they came back to you, right? However, if you owned a home in a walled city, you could only repurchase it back if you sold the right. In other words, you have a right to repurchase it within the first year. After the first year, you lost that right. Even when the Jubilee comes, you cannot redeem it. This is the law of redeeming property. So anyway, that's just the context of giving this. So the question is, what's considered a year? The Talmud asks the question. What's a year? How do you count a year? And especially this year is a leap year. How do you count it? Is a year 12 months? What if it's a leap year? It's 13 months. So we don't know exactly, except that the Torah says, because it's used the word shana tamima, a year tamima, complete. So therefore, redeemed at the end of a complete year means that in a leap year, complete means including the 13th month. Because that's complete, right? So let's understand over here. In an ordinary year, right, you never consider what's incomplete of a year because there's no such thing of 13 months. So 12 months pass, that's a year, finished, right? That's a complete year, we get it. Yet the fact remains that that year could be even more complete than 12 months. How? Well, if you have a leap year, it's a month longer. And it is incomplete until 13 months pass. So this makes the leap year more complete, or let's say more perfect than an ordinary year. Let's put it in other ways. 12 months pass, and you ask yourself, oh, 12 months pass? What kind of year of this is this? Oh, it's a regular year? Oh, okay, so it's a complete year. If it's a leap year, what would you say at that moment? Oh, it's incomplete. That means there's two kinds of complete. There is one that is simply not deficient, right? And another that is as complete as can be. 13 months is as complete as can be. Okay. Let's give another example to bring this out. There's a mitzvah to provide for the needy, for those who are down and out, all right? Actually, let's... Here's the verse. You shall surely open your hand to him and lend him enough to cover all of the deficiencies that he lacks. This is talking about lending money. Person's down and out. So the question is, how much do you lend? How do we know what the limit is that we're obliged individually or collectively as a community, whatever the case may be? Now, everybody would agree if you're lacking food, you got to eat food, obviously. What if the person's lacking a car for transportation? Well, maybe you can just say, well, use the bus. Can you say that to the poor person? So our sages tell us, interesting, our sages taught that the words enough to cover all the deficiencies, and look at the Hebrew for a moment, if those who can follow in Hebrew, de mechseroi, oops. De machzaro, which means enough to cover the deficiencies, instruct you to support the poor person, but they don't instruct you to make him wealthy. The words that he lacks, asher yechsar lo, which is redundant in the verse, tells us to give him even a horse to ride upon and a servant to run before him. So what's this talking about? So the sages say that if you look at the verse, let's go back to the verse for a second, so you can see for yourself. In the Hebrew, you shall surely open your hand to him. Havitavitenu, you should lend him. How much? De mechseren. Lend him enough that he needs. But then it says, Asher yechsar lo, that which he's lacking, that he's lacking, his deficiencies. That's redundant. Well, we just said, give him enough to cover his needs, right? Why you say that he is lacking? Well, obviously, it's needs that he's lacking. So our sages learn from this is two things over here. There is the basics, enough to cover, right? enough to cover deficiencies. Deficiencies that are considered deficiencies to all. Food is deficiencies to all. A roof over your head, that you have some kind of place to live, is a deficiency to all. Now, you need to lend them money, or the community needs to lend them money. You have to make sure that those things basics are really covered. But then it says the deficiencies that he is lacking. Well, who's he? Sages say here that the redundancy over here is to teach us something amazing. That this is subjective on who the person is. If the person was formerly wealthy and now is poor, so he used to drive a car, and maybe even a nice car. And that's what he's accustomed to. So lend him money that he could get that back. If the guy who is another poor person didn't have a car, so you don't need to give him that, right? He used to take the bus, or he used to walk. So that's not his deficiency. He's not lacking that. This is the distinction over here. So what are we seeing over here? You can see complete in two ways. Complete means take complete care of deficiencies. What is that? Fill the gaps. Fill the basic gaps that everybody has in an equal way. Right? Then there's something more. Give according to their completion, to what makes them complete. So that's going to be different, one person to another. And that's something that we need to be sensitive and to help them with. Is that clear? So we've been speaking quite often about broken versus being whole. So if something's broken, got to fill that which is broken. There's a pothole in the street, fill it up so it doesn't wreak havoc, make damage. There's a damage, a broken fence, fix the fence. But then there's something that is whole, and now you're bringing it back to that wholeness. So in charity, that would be to bring back to their wholeness what they were. Right now, they're broken. Fill in, that they shouldn't be broken. Well, if they have a roof over their head and they have money and they have food to eat, that's going to deal with their brokenness. But that's not dealing with their wholeness. So Asher Yechser Loi is coming to say, to add those deficiencies, his deficiencies, in order to make him not merely deficient, but to make him whole. Restore him to that. So if it means that he had a horse and he had servants running before him, because that's how wealthy he was, bring him back to that lifestyle. I mean, we're talking about lending money over here, right? That's what the reference is. Is that clear? So two ideas of what complete means. So also when it comes now to a whole year, 12 months is a whole year. But what's a perfect year? What's a perfect year? 13 months, because it's even more whole. It's more perfect, so to speak, in the sense of wholeness, right? Because you can't get more than that. And even in a whole year, there are possibility of 383 days, 84, 85, if I'm not mistaken. The calendar can be different. Are we good so far? We're clear? Beautiful. So let's turn our attention back to the Paschal Lamb offering, Pesach Sheni, from our Parsha. Pesach Sheni, if it's a makeup date, in other words, to complete that which we're missing. So what do you got to do? Fill in the gaps. Last time you failed to bring the Korban Pesach on the first attempt. This time you bring the offering. So you fixed that which was broken, but you're not perfect. Why? Because the offering on the 14th was not brought, right? It wasn't brought. So you're just filling the gap of something that was lacking, which is great. God gives us that opportunity. You can make up, but you're still missing the original date. Or is there a way that we can do something about the original date? So according to Rabbi Nelson and Rabbi Hananya, the Pesach Sheni for them is only a makeup date. So because you missed the first time, God's giving you an opportunity, you can make up for it. In other words, there's something that's broken and you could fix it. Yes, you can fix it. But you're not whole. You're not complete. You're not perfect. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, on the other hand, who calls it an independent festival, says that not only is it a makeup date for that which we were missing, it wasn't just to fix that which is broken, but it's actually an independent festival, meaning in and of its own that it has a power greater than just filling the gaps, but it's making us whole and complete, as if the gaps weren't there. In the words of the Rebbe, according to Rebbe, when we bring a Paschal offering on the 14th day of Iyar, it is complete, an independent Paschal offering, in addition to fulfilling what was missed on the first Passover. This means that the 14th of Iyar is the right day, the correct festival for the Paschal offering. When we say that the motif of Pesach Sheni is it's never too late, we mean not only that we can make up for something that we had missed, which is a general repair, we mean that we can accomplish it perfectly with every detail intact. When we say Pesach Sheni is not a restoration of first Passover, but rather an independent festival, we mean that it is not merely restoration that fills in the gaps that we missed. Rather, it's its own festival, which was previously missed, is completed to perfection. Wow, this is amazing. It's a redefining of Pesach Sheni. It's not just a makeup, right? It's not just that, which we couldn't fix the first date, right? But it's a whole new festival. This offering is not just a makeup, but it brings us to completion, to perfection. The question is how? Okay, it sounds amazing, sounds beautiful, but how do we deal with the deed that was done that occurred earlier, right? I mean, the fact is they didn't bring it on the first Passover. So what's happening? What is different by bringing it the second time that it creates a new reality? I mean, new reality henceforward, fine. But how does it change something of the past? That's the question. So to answer this, we have to understand the concept of tshuva. What does it mean? Repentance, tshuva, to return from previous wrongdoings. So the Rebbe explains that when you do tshuva out of love, repentance out of love, not only do you secure forgiveness for your previous sins, but as the Talmud tells us, we actually transform those sins to merits. So the question is how? How do you do that exactly? How can you later regret, change what happened? Again, from now on, okay, we're on good terms. But how does it change the past exactly? You can say God is, beyond time, so, he accepts that. That's not an explanation. We regret, we feel bad, right, that we committed them. But how does it change things? So the Rebbe explains. This is like repentance from love of God, which changes the sins that we committed before we repented. Repentance can change the past because it doesn't create a new reality. Love of God was always our reality, inasmuch as our soul, our inner reality, was faithful to God, even while we committed the sin. It is just that the inner commitment was concealed, and our repentance revealed what had always been true. Therefore, it can impact the past. Wow. This is very powerful. So tshuva doesn't actually change anything. All it does is reveal what's the real truth. When we committed the sin, someone who's a casual bystander, what would they see? Someone who turned against God. That's all what God sees. And that's not the truth. But it was never the truth. It's only that it seemed that way from our actions. When we do tshuva, we reveal that it was always true, that we were always connected with God. Our behavior were due to extraneous things that led us there. It's not really me. Right? That's why nichnas by ruach shtus, that a spirit of folly enters, something we spoke about in last week's parsha by the soita, the suspect wife, right? Meaning that this is inconsistent with the inner truth. External things brought me to be inconsistent with me, with my truth. So this changes the whole perception of sin. Sin never indicated that we're broken with God. It means that our actions were inconsistent with our inner truth, with our real reality. That's what it's saying. So let me give you an example maybe that can help us appreciate and understand this idea. Is everybody with me? Following? It's phenomenal teachings over here. I mentioned it's, our anniversary. So imagine, you booked for your 10th anniversary a trip with, your spouse. And, and you went on the trip and you fought. And it was terrible. It was terrible. So what happens? Oh my gosh, you spend all that money, you spend that time, and it's supposed to be a special time, and look what happens. So you return home and you go to, get someone to help you, a therapist, a coach, a rabbi, whatever. And what do you discover? You discover things that you weren't aware of before so clearly, that how deeply you love each other. But because of that love and the neediness sometimes in that love, that sometimes the pressures of life bring us to a place that, we act not in accordance to that true love that we always kind of knew, but through the help that you got, it revealed something much deeper about your connection to your spouse. Now you understand what happened, and now you're on a very different place in that relationship. So now you go back, maybe this took a few years of therapy, or maybe if you went to a rabbi, took less. Therapy, takes much longer. If you went to a coach, even less. And now you're going back on vacation to the same place from the 10th anniversary, and you're remaking the 10th anniversary celebration, right? Now, can you make up for what happened a few years ago? Actually, in this instance, you make up much more for it. Because of it, what happened is you found the inner love that you have is so deep and profound that you didn't have the true awareness of it. And therefore didn't recognize how deep and profound it was. And even in the fighting, it was because of the love. Yes, a neediness, maybe a selfishness at times, but because of the bond, that's what created the friction and the problems. But now you're aware. So now, not are you celebrating, and now you're moving forward in a much healthier way, but you're not just redressing the past, but you're actually remaking the past, because you're revealing that really what happened there, it wasn't we broke off from each other, that we were distant from each other. Deep down, we were very close to each other. And that's what, together with certain pressures that were incongruent to our bond, that, were inconsistent to who we are, of those outside issues or things that led us to fight. But really, now is revealed that fight was because of a deeper love. The love was there then. Now you just appreciate that and understand that. Wow. So that gives us a different insight. So with this now we can have a deeper insight into what Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said, that Pesach Sheni is an independent holiday. What the tshuva does is to bring out that it was always perfect. Our relationship with God was always perfect. Yes, something on the outside was broken, right? Yes, there's something external of me, my actions, but the connection didn't lose that. Let's see how the Rebbe explains this in this week's Sikha. Pesach Sheni, was for those Jews who were impure. After acknowledging and confessing their impurity, they approached with a heartfelt plea. We are impure by contact with a dead person. Why should we lose out and be unable to bring the divine an offering in its time among the children of Israel? This was an expression of repentance in every respect. It included a confession of their faults, a plea to restore that they were lacking, and a plea for perfection. They asked not only for the chance to bring the offering, but to bring it in its time and among the children of Israel. In other words, Pesach Sheni is not only that we're correcting the past sins to make up for the missed opportunity, but that we can restore them to a pristine perfection. That's the idea. In other words, it's in its time, because the word there in Hebrew, it's in the verse, it says, b'mayadoi, in its time. In other words, yeah, but aren't you bringing this because you didn't do it in its time? So why is the verse saying in its time for the second time? It's not in its time. It's a missed opportunity that you lost. Now it's make-up time. But that's not what the word says. In its time. I mean, it's the right time. It's perfect now. Because that tshuva that you did in the proper way is then bringing it literally in its time. And you're amongst the children of Israel. You're not different, separate. What is the children of Israel? You're revealing the truth, that you're always connected. You're always connected. So what do we understand from this? Pesach Sheni is not just about fixing the broken, but it's about making something whole, even more whole, something that's complete, even more complete. With this, we can understand an interesting idea. Talmud tells us someone who converts between the first and second months of Passover, similar to a minor who turned bar mitzvah between two Passovers, must bring a second Paschal offering. This is the opinion of Rabbi. Now, inherently, if inherently this Passover is only about a makeup, well, if the first one you were not obliged because you were not converted yet, or you were a child and therefore you don't have the obligation, then there's nothing to make up, right? For the second one, because it's only a makeup, according to Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Hananya. But Rabbi says differently, right? He says differently that it's not merely a makeup. And with this, therefore, he says that a convert and a child who became bar mitzvah after Passover, but before the second Passover, they are obliged to bring. Now, you can say for maybe the child, maybe they were involved in it, the first Passover, so they have some kind of connection. But according to Rebbe, the convert, that doesn't make sense. Why would the convert have to bring? There was nothing that he was obliged to. The first Passover, he wasn't Jewish. So there's no makeup, right? Question clear? So the answer is something we've discussed many times. Talmud tells us, here's a quote from the Talmud. A convert who converted is comparable to a newborn infant. So the question is asked over here in Hebrew. Look at the Hebrew. Gershin is Gayer, a convert that converted. Shouldn't it say a non-Jew that converted? Not a convert that converted?
Is this
right?
like when
So,
a boy has his bas mitzvah?
So the Chidah explains, sorry, Michael, we're going to see what the Chidah explains over here. Just give me a moment. By saying a convert who converted rather than a non-Jew who converted, the sages taught us that before they convert, their souls can be found at Mount Sinai, where we received the Torah. This means that their souls were in the lofty, wondrous state of Mount Sinai from time immemorial. And there they were awaiting their chance to join our people. Sages were thus correct to say a convert that converted. Wow. So someone converts today, their soul has been waiting at Mount Sinai for 3,300 plus years. That soul should come down into a body, into this world, to claim its rightful place. That's pretty powerful. What does that mean? It means that they had a spark of Jewishness in them, and that spark turned through the conversion into a flame. Michael, sorry, finish that thought.
Is the law the same for when the boy comes in the age for bringing the Passover sacrifice?
No, I mean, he's Jewish, so he's not converting, right? He's Jewish. The boy I explained about, because the boy could have been involved already with the family, because it's, you do it with families, and he could have been involved in it, so there was some kind of connection to it already by the first Passover, and now comes the second one. So so you're obliged, you could say that, but you can't say that by the non-Jew. The non-Jew had no connection to it. The boy, you could say, had a connection. He was with his father, by the first Passover, and he was involved in it, but he wasn't obliged at the time. But he was there in Jerusalem. He was there for the holiday, right? Can't say that for the convert. Convert had no connection to the first Paschal lamb offering, because it's only for a Jew to bring. So this is why they consider it to have missed out, and why they have to bring the second Paschal offering, because the convert has a spark of a Jewish soul all along, even before they convert. It only turns into a flame by conversion. Now we have to wait to convert, that we know that in fact that that they do have that soul, but they had the spark of a Jewish soul all along. So this, the Rebbe says, with respect to the convert who converts between Passover, first Passover, and Pesach Sheni, though his Jewish soul only appeared after his conversion, he was really a convert even before he converted. He had a spark of a holy soul before he was a Jew. Thus, his conversion revealed his retrospective connection to the mitzvahs of Torah. Therefore, he is not only rendering himself perfect by bringing the offering on Pesach Sheni, he is also correcting that what he was lacking from the perspective of his soul. So what are we saying over here? We're saying over here two things. In a sense, he was missing something, even though he wasn't even obliged yet, but he was a convert. He only converted after Pesach. But before Pesach, he was a convert. He had that soul, he had that spark, right? It was assigned to him already, right? So he's lacking something. He has to make up for it, the second Pesach. Not only is he lacking something, he has to make up for it, and that's a correction. But he's also doing it in a perfect way. The Mayadai in its time, perfect amongst the Jewish people. So what are we saying over here? So what's coming out from this? That even though he wasn't obliged, he's still missing. So it's like, if you're good, you're good. But isn't better better? The Torah is going even a step further over here. If better is better, then good is just not good enough. Just because someone isn't obligated to bring the Paschal Lamb offering on the first Passover doesn't mean that they should be content to go without it. They don't feel complete if they can be better. They feel deficient. Something vital is missing, because the Torah mindset is that we strive to be the best that we can be. There's never an excuse for using an excuse. And when you come to think about that, that's the entire idea of Pesach Sheni. That people were exempt. By law, they were exempt, yet they weren't content. So in a sense, by law, the convert was exempt. He was exempt, but he's not content. He wants to be the best. That's what Rabbi is saying over here. So the fact that they felt that they could have used a legal exemption, finished. But they weren't satisfied. They felt the lack. They felt they were missing something. They wanted to be whole, complete, perfect. And this bothered them. That's why they pleaded with Moshe from the depths of the soul. We want to make up for it. We want to be not just to fix that which needs to be fixed. We want to be whole. The Jews who brought it the first time, they're whole. We also want that wholeness. Not only want wholeness, we want, even though we're not obliged to, remember, they're not obliged. Remember, take the storyline. The Rebbe is going over here, this is amazing. What's the storyline over here? They were impure, so by law, legally, they're exempt. They could have just, okay, we're exempt, so good is good. We don't have to bring. That's the law. Good isn't good enough if you could have better. That was their attitude. Good isn't good enough, you could be better. And therefore they cry out to Moshe, Lama Nigara, why should we be lacking to be better? And that bringing this, we could be better. That's what they want. That's an amazing message. And others, it's not just about repairing that which is broken. And it's not only about being complete, but it's about not being satisfied unless we could be the best that we could be. Even if you were 98% good, but there's 2% you could have been better. Not from ego, not so I could feel good about myself. Because that's what the Torah is introducing over here. That there's always more. That always could achieve more and be more. And don't limit myself. Good is good, and better is better. But in the place of being the best, being good is not sufficient. Pesach Sheni, they were good. What does it mean they were good? They were exempt. No issue here, right? But their attitude was, no, we want better. It wasn't their attitude, we need to fix something even. What was there to fix? When you think about it, nothing to fix. The fact that you're impure, is not your fault. That you're in the hospital, someone dies there. You become impure. Your fault. You went to go do a mitzvah to visit somebody, and you become impure, right? Okay, yeah, hospitals in, but whatever. You understand the idea. So, like, being impure is not a guilty thing. It just means you can't bring an offering. You could be impure and live your life that way, except by bringing offerings to God. You're good. But I could be better. I could have this to make me more complete and whole, even though I'm not obliged. So not satisfied with just being good and better even, but the best that we could have. And that's the idea of then the convert that converts also, right? They were totally not obliged. But still, Rabbi says, what does he say? They should bring the second Passover. Why? Because second Passover is not about just filling the gap. It's about being the best we can. So they have a connection to it. They have a spark of a soul. Now it's a flame. So they have this is an opportunity that they could be better, the best that they could be. Got to give it to them. That's what Rebbe says. It's a very powerful message. Yeah, which ties in with all of our brokenness and wholeness and how we look at ourselves and look at others. So here, it's a combination of the two coming together in such a powerful way, right? Of being whole, complete, and yet feeling that that's not good enough. That's not the best, because complete can be even more complete. So it's not coming out of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm a broken vessel. No, it's coming out of wholeness, out of being complete. But yeah, complete doesn't mean you're not perfect. So you can perfect yourself. There's more. So imagine that in every encounter that you have, and it's not easy. But you look inside of yourself, how could I have done something better here? And even though maybe you were amazing, and 98% is a pretty high mark. Who gets 98%? but that's not what you're looking at. You're looking at how you could be more. That's very powerful. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
Amazing class. Happy anniversary,
Thank
Rabbi
you.
Frank, for you and Rabbi and Simcha.
Thank you. All right, folks. There are many of you. I'll see you very shortly.
Is the link sent out? Or?
Yeah, it's the same one every week.
Okay.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you all. And we should only have simchas. EZ. Just curious if you can tell me who you are, because everybody else I know. And I'm sure I know who you are too, but I just don't know the initials. If you want to care to share, send me a note. That would be wonderful. All right. Beautiful. All right, folks. God bless you all.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bless you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless you.
Bye.
See you later.
Bless you.
Yeah.